Capone must be the most celebrated and infamous gangster in American history. His story has been told and retold many times in dozens of fictionalized and true-to-life movies, television shows, books, and other media types. In today's video, we'll be going over the lifestyle of gangster Al Capone, the man behind the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So, stick around. Capone's nickname. Al Capone spent his days growing up in New York City and was an active member of the 5 Points Gang, a criminal enterprise primarily full of younger Italian Americans in Manhattan that gave way to many well-known mobsters such as Charlie Lucky Luciano and Johnny Torrio. In the heart of New York, Al Capone suffered a facial wound while fighting in a brothel, which earned him the legendary nickname Scarface. Under Torrio's tutelage, Capone was introduced to Brooklyn racketeer Frankie Yale, a.k.a. Frank Sale. He hired Capone as a bartender and an occasional bouncer at the Coney Island dance hall and saloon called the Harvard Inn. The story goes that while working over there, Capone allegedly insulted the sister of a pretty local felon named Frank Galluccio. Frank Galluccio promptly slashed him across the face with a small pocket knife 3 times. There's another story that stated that 2 men approached Alfonso Capone, and he got his cheek slashed by a knife, but the newspaper got the side of the face wrong. Gomez speculated that Capone insulted Galluccio's sister at a different dance hall alongside other evidence. Then, Galluccio went on to track down Capone at a restaurant and promptly attacked him. Regardless of what happened, the wounds eventually healed, and it left him with a scar that gave him the nickname Scarface, but he didn't care much for the moniker. He instead preferred to be called by the nickname Snorky by most of his closest friends, which was a reference to his fashion sense. Later on, Capone told people that he sustained around 3 scars from shrapnel while fighting in France during World War I, even though he had never gone to war in the first place. Although Galluccio left some permanent marks on Capone's face, thanks to intervention on behalf of Yale, there was no more ill will between them. When he went on to take over the Chicago mob, Capone hired Galluccio to be his bodyguard for a then astronomically high salary of around $100 a week. His early years. Capone spent most of his early years hanging around the docks over at the Brooklyn Navy Yard near his home. He was surprisingly a pretty good student in his youth, but at the age of 14, while he was attending Public School 133, Capone made the mistake of hitting a teacher in the face. According to some of the accounts, Capone was expelled, and according to others, he left school himself. Whatever the case was, he never went back. After leaving school, Capone went on to work, holding jobs at a candy store. He also went to a bowling alley and a local bindery. He made quick money at the pool hall at 20 Garfield Place and played on the semi-pro Brooklyn baseball team with his brother Ralph. At the same time, he had a few legitimate jobs. Capone belonged to a few street gangs that specialized in things like petty crimes and a bit of vandalism. In addition to the South Brooklyn Rippers and Junior 40 Thieves, Capone joined Johnny Torrio's James Street Boys gang, becoming Torrio's protege. At 16, Capone became a member of a Lower East Side-based gang named after the notorious 19th century Manhattan slum. His rise to notoriety. Torrio decided to move out to Chicago in 1909 in pursuit of working for the crime syndicate boss Big Jim Colosimo, and later, in 1920, Torrio called upon Al Capone to join their growing enterprise in the Windy City of Chicago. Colosimo was well known for operating hundreds of brothels, prostitution rings, and gambling rackets. Still, he reportedly refused to go into the process of bootlegging, which was a huge growth opportunity for many organized crimes with the enactment of Prohibition in 1920. Unfortunately, Colosimo was shot when Al Capone decided to come to Chicago. It was unknown who shot Colosimo, and nobody was ever arrested for Colosimo's murder. Many believe that Torrio himself ordered the hit, and that Al Capone was also an accomplice of the killing, making it an inside job. In November of 1924, the leader of the Irish North Side gang, Dean O'Banion, was killed outside of his florist shop on the orders of Torrio. The following year, that gang decided to retaliate and fight back to assassinate Torrio with a shootout. Although Torrio was severely wounded, he still managed to survive. After serving some time in jail, he retired, ceding the power of the Chicago-based criminal organization over to the 26-year-old Al Capone. Torrio later resigned as the criminal organization leader that became known as the Outfit. For 3 years, he decided to move back to Italy. He later returned to the United States and became something of an elder statesman among mobsters, which helped fund the National Commission of the American Mafia in 1934. With the resignation of Torrio, Al Capone came forward to take control of the Outfit. While Capone made his money flouting the nationwide constitutional ban on the manufacturing, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors, another Capone made most of his money by enforcing it. Al's other brother, by the name of James Vincenzo Capone, decided to leave New York in his mid-teens and went on to change his name to Richard James Hart, after silent film Western idol William S. Hart. He went on to become a federal prohibition agent in Nebraska. Capone did not receive a warm welcome when he decided to buy a home on Miami Beach's Palm Island in 1928. Instead, Miami instituted what would be known as the Chicago Plan, which called for Capone's arrest whenever he was within city limits. And at one point, he was arrested almost 3 times within 10 days, often on a vagrancy charge that was especially made for Capone. The gangster was arrested a number of times, but wound up in jail only once. From 1925 onwards to 1929, Capone was the most visible and active mobster in America. Capone then went on to work with the local media and made good friends with many politicians and people in power to cultivate the business of a legitimate businessman. The latter was concerned with the welfare of his fellow Chicagoans. But Capone's tenure was an extensive period of rising rivalries with other Chicago gangsters, and conflicts grew and frequently went on to become pretty violent. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. With the mob violence escalating in Chicago, it culminated with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre on February 14, 1929. 7 members or associates of the Bugs Moran gang, which were rivals of Capone, were all lined up against a garage wall by men posing as police and were machine gunned to death right then and there. The brutality and the gore concerning the murders made big headlines throughout the country. Capone's downfall. In October 1931, Capone was finally convicted of tax evasion and was reportedly sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. He served his time in the Cook County Jail and the Atlanta and Alcatraz prisons. It wouldn't be an understatement to say that prison time was severe, a longer term, more than tax evasion cases usually led, but that wasn't Capone's biggest problem. Capone was then infected with a sexually transmitted disease named syphilis, which in its advanced cases was considered incurable. And that's pretty much it for today's story about the mafia boss Al Capone. Got any questions? Make sure to leave comments below in the comments section. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn notifications on for future videos. With that said, we bid you farewell.